Welcome back to Nothing But the Truth. I'm your host, Trudy Stern. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most alarming and consequential political stories unfolding in our country right now, the New York mayoral race. Zoran Mamdani, a radical, anti-Israel, anti-police candidate, wants to run New York City. We're talking about a man with no executive experience, someone who's never managed so much as a team, let alone a city with 400,000 employees and a $108 billion budget. Yet somehow he's leading in some polls. What can we do right now to stop a Mamdani administration before it's too late? To help us unpack all of this, I'm joined by Samantha Ettus, a powerhouse voice for women, for Israel, and for truth. Samantha is an accomplished advocate, author, and media commentator who has dedicated her platform to fighting anti-Semitism, standing up for Jewish values, and pushing back against the growing tide of hate and misinformation in our culture. She's been featured on the Today Show, Good Morning America, and countless national outlets, where her clear, passionate voice continues to inspire and mobilize people to speak out and take action. Samantha understands how narratives are built and how they can be broken. And today we're going to talk about exactly that. The narrative that's being sold to New Yorkers by Mamdani and his far left movement, the danger it poses to the Jewish community and to the city as a whole, and how we can fight back. Together, we'll talk about the strategy, the stakes, and what's really at risk if someone like Mamdani were ever to take control of New York. Our safety, our economy, our values, and truth itself are on the line. This is going to be a powerful conversation about politics, perception, and the fight for the soul of our city. So stay with us. You're listening to Nothing But the Truth with Trudy, and we have with us Samantha Ettus. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So Samantha, we're in the final stretch. This is crisis mode. Mamdani is ahead in some polls, and if people don't turn out, we could wake up to a city led by someone openly hostile to Israel, the police, and businesses. What's the message that cuts through the noise and gets people out to vote right now?
Well, first of all, you're hitting me at a really interesting point because a poll just came out. That's a very reputable poll from Susquehanna, and it says that I think there's a lot of misperception about the Jewish population, and there's been so much written. The press loves to write about how Jews are for Mamdani, and it's simply not the case. The poll shows that 84% of the Jewish population in New York is not voting for Mamdani.
Wow.
And I think that's so seismic because everything the press has shared with us is just false. And it's a sensational headline to say, oh, look, the Jews are voting for the Muslim, and it's simply not true. Most of those voters, of the 84%, are voting for Cuomo. And this is a very winnable race at this point. Something enormous happened in the last few days. We have a turnout that no one expected. It's 5 times the turnout of the 2021 turnout. And I'm very optimistic that we can pull this out as a Cuomo win. We did not expect to have such strong numbers with the over 50 crowd, and the under 30 crowd has actually disappointed Mamdani in terms of turnout. So they're not even mirroring the primary numbers. So I think we always kind of knew that if we could get to 1.9 million voters, this could be a Cuomo win. And it looks like we're going to hit that.
So do you think that it is a contrived strategy that the Mamdani people are giving out a false narrative, letting people think that he is way ahead in the polls, hoping that that will keep people from going out to vote by saying, oh, it's not even worth it. We might as well just stay home.
Yeah, I think there's 2 really important things for voters to think about and for all New Yorkers to think about. One is that every single vote in this election will count. So your sister, your grandmother, your daughter, every single human being you come in contact with, your doorman, your taxi driver. I have a friend the other day, she convinced her taxi driver to vote that day. Every one of those votes matters. And so we should all be spending every moment we have until the election getting and mobilizing every single person to become a voter, because this is such an important election. And the number 2 thing is that at this point, we all know It is statistically impossible for Curtis Sliwa to win. So if you put in a vote for Curtis Sliwa, it's actually a vote for Mamdani. So make no mistake, no matter how idealistic you are, whether you love him and you've always wanted him to win, and he's certainly doing better than he's ever done before in the past, because we know he runs a lot, he cannot win this election. The numbers, it would be statistically impossible. So a vote for him is a throwaway vote. So every person needs to vote for Cuomo. And it doesn't matter if you love him or barely like him, or you think that he might have been involved in why your parent died during COVID. Hold your nose and vote for Cuomo, because he is still better than Mamdani, who has, as you said, never ever managed a budget, never held a job, and never managed a team. It would be absurd to make his first job the most important and biggest city in America.
Would be totally catastrophic, completely.
Correct.
I want to just go back to something that you mentioned a little bit before, and that is people who really like Sliwa and are coming out to vote for Sliwa. So I actually, like you, ran into some people and spoke to them about the race. I ran into one of the people in my building who works as a maintenance worker in our building in the city. And I was talking to him, and he was saying, you know, how horrible Mamdani mayor would be. And we got to talking, and he said that he's a staunch Republican and that he was going to vote for Sliwa. So I said, but you have to understand that a vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mamdani, because Sliwa has no chance of winning. And he said, oh, I never really considered that. I didn't think of it that way. I said, if you really want to defeat Mamdani, which seemed to be his objective, because he really understood how catastrophic a Mayor Mamdani would be, he said, wow, I didn't really look at it that way. And he goes, I'm so happy that I spoke to you about it, and then I ran into you. And I was thinking about that today, and I was thinking about that a lot. And I said, all of us, each one of us, must take the time to speak to everybody that we know that might be voting for Sliwa, and speak to them about the fact that a vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mamdani. We just need to have all hands on deck here.
Well,
Everybody.
yeah, I mean, your story is inspiring even to me, just because I think it's a reminder that this is an election that's based on hand-to-hand combat. We have to go out and solicit every vote, because in many ways what we're fighting against is not Mamdani, but the media, who is feeding us a false narrative. And, you know, we don't have to get in right now to why that's happening, but it's definitely happening. And it's very, very important that we fight through that.
Well, I do think that our listeners would be inspired if they knew why the false narrative was being told to us. So could you lay that out? Why are they doing that?
Well, I believe that Mamdani, obviously, he's incredibly charismatic. Now, a lot of us look at him and say, "Oh, it's so obvious. He's a snake oil salesman, and he's not truthful, and you can tell he's a compulsive liar, and I don't believe anything he says." But at the end of the day, he's far more charismatic than Andrew Cuomo is, and that's just a fact, whether you are a Mamdani person or not. But unfortunately, this is a job that's based on experience and expertise, and he has neither of those things, and his policies don't make any economic sense, et cetera. Now, I think the media likes Mamdani because it certainly will be a more scintillating 4 years if you have this young guy who's bound to make a ton of unforced errors at the helm of New York City. So that's, going to sell a lot more media. But I also think that, we've become obsessed as a culture with oppressor oppressed. And Mamdani has fit himself, even though we know this is not the truth or the case, he's made himself into this underdog candidate who represents the people. Now, of course, this is a false narrative. His parents are both incredibly wealthy. He grew up having access to things like the Emmys and the Oscars because his mom was a famous film director and his father was a rabble rouser jihadist professor at Columbia. This is a man who was a Nepo baby, is a Nepo baby. He's really never held a real job. He worked for his mom. He never held a job on his own for more than 3 months. You could say his job as assemblyman was, a job that he held on his own. He didn't show up for 80% of the votes he had in the assembly. So there was a good Instagram reel that Zachary Taylor Ross did. And I'm actually butchering his name right now, probably, but he just did a great video where he went up to people and said, by the way, would you hire this guy? And he showed him Mamdani's resume, and, everyone from, a nail salon to a vendor, a hot dog vendor was like, I would never, ever hire someone who didn't show up for work 80% of the time and who had so little job experience. And that's the case with Mamdani. So, we've all been fed this story, and charisma only can carry you so far, but running a budget of over $108 billion it's just not possible. He's never even managed a lemonade stand. So I don't see how he would be able to do that.
Yes, I think that he would not be able to do that. I think that's very clear to me and to you, but I think it's really important to spread that word. So the other side, the Mamdani side, is very, very energized. They're loud, they're organized, they're online. What can we do? What is the best way for our community to match that energy in these final days? How do we mobilize, not just talk?
Well, I think we are doing it. I think one of the things that if any of your listeners are committed, they go to my Instagram, which is at Samantha Ettus. And in the bio, I have a place that they can volunteer for to go to one of the polls. And we need people to, it's not that you're going to be inside working the polls, it's that you are going to be outside one of the polling sites, and you are going to be having conversations with people about why they should vote for Cuomo. And those conversations, just like the one that you had with the guy who works in your building, or my friend had with her taxi driver, those conversations really do change the needle, because a lot of people show up at the polls or walk by the polls undecided. And you can make a difference with them. And we need really enthusiastic volunteers to stand there and have conversations about why it makes so much sense for the health of the city and for their economic future and their family's future to vote for Cuomo.
So whether you like him or not, everyone needs to just hold their nose and vote for Cuomo. Whether you're very moved by the fact that he had a sexual assault lawsuit against him, or you didn't like how he handled COVID, that just is not relevant right now. We need to look beyond that, and we need to make sure that Mamdani does not get into this race. The other thing I want to say is, whether you like Cuomo or not, he, on the other hand, is very qualified. He knows how to run a state, and he would be a very capable and qualified mayor for sure.
I do want to touch upon something you said, because before October 7th, I was actually in the women's empowerment space, focused on women in business. And I care enormously about women's equality, and I care enormously about women feeling safe. And in no way do I want to dismiss the accusations against Andrew Cuomo, even though none of them were necessarily came to fruition, and he wasn't convicted of anything. He was accused of sexual harassment multiple times, not to my knowledge sexual assault, but sexual harassment, and those are two separate things. And I take that very seriously. However, we're right now deciding between him and a candidate who has very deep ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. And we know how the Muslim Brotherhood feels about women. So if you are not voting for Cuomo, you are voting for a candidate who doesn't support women's rights. And I think that's really, really important for people to think about, because this is not a vote between some Boy Scout and Andrew Cuomo. This is a vote between someone who started his college chapter of SJP. He has been spouting anti-Semitic rhetoric, so he will make the city unsafe, not just for Jewish people, but for anyone who cares about Western values and for anyone who cares about equality for women. This is just not your candidate.
Great point. I think that was a really, really important point. I think it's also important to note that a lot of the things that Mamdani is promising are things he cannot come through with anyway, that they are in the purview of the governor or the state assembly. things like free buses or taxing the rich and
Or supermarkets, I mean, or the free
free
supermarkets. I mean,
supermarkets.
these are communist policies. And by the way, he doesn't even live by these policies. I actually, just for fun the other day, because this is the kind of thing I do and in my career, is I contacted the wedding and catering venue where he got married to his wife, because I wanted to see how expensive it was. And it was wildly expensive. This is not a man, he's actually abusing rent control in New York City while saying he's going to freeze rent control. It just makes no sense. So he's actually taking a rent controlled apartment from someone who actually deserves it and needs it. He's paying less than $3,000 a month in rent, and his parents are millionaires. So it really doesn't make any sense. It's completely unethical. And I think that when you look at the thread of everything he's been saying, just the other day, I don't know if you noticed this. I think it was like 2 days ago, Trudy. I don't know if you followed this. I know you've been in Israel, but he mentioned the other day that his aunt, and he told a sob story, and he was crying when he told it to, I believe it was CNN, that his aunt felt so uncomfortable wearing her hijab in the subway after 9/11 that she had to stop taking the subway. And it turns out he doesn't have an aunt who lives in New York. It was a complete fabrication, and no one in the media fact checked it. And if you look at his stories, there is a common thread, and people who don't tell the truth tend to repeat that pattern over and over again. And he has a very, very bad relationship with the truth. And I also did a deep dive, and I did this Instagram video a couple of months ago about his wife, because I couldn't believe that no one in the media was talking about Rama Duwaji, who is his under 30-year-old wife, who he met online. I think they met on Hinge, the dating app. And she says she's from Damascus, but she's actually from Texas. She continues on her social media, on her Instagram, to spout anti-Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric, constantly refers to a genocide, and she just gets away with it because the press is not talking about her at all. So I started digging into it, and it is just wild how consistent she is in spreading lies about Israel. Now, she would be the first lady of New York City should he win. And I think that is just a terrifying reality for us to wake up to on November 5th. And it just would be a disaster. So I'm really hoping that is not the case.
So I think that would be a really big disaster. I do want to just touch upon, I did actually read about his aunt, that story with his aunt. And I had also read that there is a concept in Islamic culture that's known as taqiyya.
Takia, yes.
Yeah, could you tell our listeners about that? Because I think that ties right into this.
Yeah. So in Islamic culture, it is completely acceptable to lie if it is furthering the goals of Islam. So it's something that is actually encouraged by their culture. And my days are spent trying to deliver true news about anti-Semitism in Israel to people through my social media. And I'm constantly battling propaganda that is filled with lies. And it's very, very difficult to chase a lie with the truth, because the lies are more scintillating and they're more exaggerated and sexier in some way, and more hysterical and dramatic. And it's completely accepted in their culture to lie if it's furthering the goals of Islam. So this is very common among jihadists. At this point, there are so many threads. You could go down a rabbit hole for days about the connections between Mamdani and jihadism. So many of his people that he's photographed with, whether it's Mahmoud Khalil or his old professors or his friend in Uganda recently, these are people who have close ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, to jihadism. And he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, and it's terrifying. He lies with abandon. He recently said that he's never talked about defunding the police, and there have been over 15 times where he talked about it in the media. So this is someone who compulsively lies, and the media prints his lies, and then we all are the ones who could suffer from that.
Really terrifying. What do you think his goals really are?
I don't mean to, I am not a conspiracy theorist and I don't mean to sound like one, but I think if you look at a lot of the local races, if you look at Rashida Tlaib and you look at a lot of AOC, a lot of these people are here to infiltrate America. If you look at faculty on campuses, we are being infiltrated with money from Qatar, from the Middle East that's not representing Western values. So they are trying to get rid of a lot of our Western values. And if you look at his connection with the DSA, he is aligning himself with socialists. And then what you're seeing is that so many prominent Democrats who have never been socialists are now endorsing Mamdani. And so what they are basically saying to us is that the Democratic Party is turning into the Socialist Party. And in the meantime, they're abandoning mainstream moderate Democrats. And that is a very scary place for us to go. New York City, for example, is the heart of Wall Street. It's been based on capitalism. And so for you to have a city then turn into a place where your mayor is advocating for socialism and advocating against capitalism, it's literally, he's the anti-American dream mayoral candidate.
Terrifying. Again, terrifying. It's the one word that comes to mind when I think about a potential Mayor Mamdani. As a person who lives in New York, it would be terrifying in a different way because I think corporations would flee, wealthy would flee, and you would be left with a shell of a city that, jobs would be gone, middle class would be suffering because corporations would be pulling their companies out of the city. And I think everybody has to realize that as a Jewish person, it's obviously horrific, but anyone who values education, he's not for charter schools. He is totally not going to make our educational system good. If you value your jobs, anyone who has a middle-class job could be worrying about the fact that corporations might realistically be leaving.
Not just that, I mean, this is a man who's never handled an emergency on his block, let alone an emergency that could take down a city. So this is a person who has not just no work experience, not just no experience managing a budget. He's never handled any crisis of any scale. And to put such an important and beautiful and incredible and melting pot of a city in his hands would be so dangerous and terrible. And I just, I want to share with you, I am a native New Yorker, but my family moved to Los Angeles 14 years ago. We had this idyllic idea that, our three kids could have lunch outside every day in California. And so we moved to Los Angeles and we moved to the Pacific Palisades because it was a little bit like, almost like a nirvana kind of place. It was too good to be true, it turned out. And we lost our home and our community in the fire in January. And we lost our home because of government incompetence. There was no water in the fire hydrants anywhere in our town. So there was never a fire truck at my house putting out the fire. A day later, there was still a fire burning in my backyard and no one had ever been there to put it out. And that's because the fire trucks had no water. The reservoir was dry. It was a complete government meltdown. And when you look at what happened, they ended up arresting an arsonist. And that made some people feel good, but no arsonist. This is a guy who literally put a cigarette butt into a brush, and he should not have been able to take down an entire town that way. But he did because of government incompetence. And I think that in many ways, it's a cautionary tale for what could happen if you put your city into the hands of a mayor with absolutely no experience and no policies that make any economic sense.
That's really a great point. Absolutely fantastic point. because everybody knows that New York is a tremendous target for terrorism. We saw 9/11, we saw the other attempted terrorist attacks in New York. And it is terrifying to think that a Mayor Mamdani would now be at the helm of, of a catastrophe like that.
Please don't
So
let that
what a
expression
great
come
point.
out of your mouth again. Let's not call him those two words next to each other.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I'm totally with you on that. As we head into the final days before this election, what is your message to New Yorkers who are exhausted, disillusioned, afraid that their voice doesn't matter? How do we turn frustration right now into action?
Well, I was a competitive tennis player growing up, and I always think about momentum. And right now, Andrew Cuomo has the momentum. And my understanding is that Mamdani is panicking because Andrew Cuomo is soaring right now, and the numbers, the turnout is in our favor. So my message is one of hope. I think that we have a great shot to win this, but we cannot give up at the final mile. We need to pursue this right until the bitter end. So again, go to the link in my bio on Instagram and sign up to volunteer at poll sites if you have enthusiasm in you for Cuomo and for this race and for stopping Mamdani. And just my message is one that we can really do this. We are going to win this race.
I certainly hope so. I absolutely certainly hope so. But I do think everyone who's listening should go to the link in your bio. Again, say what that is.
It's just at Samantha Ettus on Instagram, and my last name is Ettus. And in that link, I have a place where you can sign up to volunteer at any of the poll sites in New York.
So please, if you're listening and you can do that, do that. Go to at Samantha Ettus, Ettus, her link in bio, and see what you can do to devote some hours, some time to helping the circumstance. Everybody can do something. We need all hands on deck. We are capable, we can do this. We absolutely can do this. So everybody, speak to everybody that you know, your friends, your family, your relatives. You've got to get the message out. Everybody needs to go out and vote Cuomo. If you are a Sliwa person or a staunch Republican, you've got to just suck it up and say, we need to do this. We need to just vote Cuomo so that we can prevent this catastrophe. And then we can all work towards another mayor another time.
Correct. I like it.
So anyway, Samantha, thank you so much for your powerful message and for everything that you're doing to stand up, speak out, and remind us of what leadership really looks like.
Thank you so much, Trudy. I really appreciate you having me.
To everyone listening, this is the moment. Don't sit it out. Every single vote matters. This election will decide the direction of New York City for years to come. Make your voice heard. Make sure your friends and neighbors do the same. Thank you for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy Stern. You can catch us every Thursday night at 9:30 on the radio. And if you missed any part of this show or want to listen to any past episode, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.